that this will be, I guess, my last official hearing where I'm chairing on behalf of public safety. So very fitting that it's fire and police today, given the relationships that I have during my tenure here and even beyond. So it's with great pleasure, at times mixed emotions, but with great pleasure to be here in front of you, in front of the folks here, on behalf of the Boston City Council, and recognizing two departments today, our fire department and our police department, for the great work that they do. It's one of the reasons I think that our city stands out among other cities across the country as one of the safest cities our size or bigger, and it's because of the dedication of the men and women of the Boston Fire Department, as well as the Boston Police Department and EMS. A team of first responders that we're so boastful here on the Boston City Council of, and it's the partnership that and working together and that spirit of cooperation, I think that lends to putting a great product out there every day on behalf of the residents of the city of Boston. So it's with great pleasure. I see we have Joe Shea, Deputy Chief Safety, Health and Wellness is here. Joe Walsh, Assistant Chief Fire Marshal for not just the city, but it's tied into the state. Fire marshals are responsive to districts across the Commonwealth. Kevin Coyne, Deputy of Administration and Finance, and Kevin McCarthy, Fire Lieutenant, the Major Case Unit, the Arson Squad, and a brother of my former colleague, Timmy McCarthy. So it's good to see you and see the continued legacy of the McCarthys in the fire department. So joined here by my colleague, City Council President Ed Flynn, in order of their arrival, City Councilor Aaron Murphy, City Councilor Liz Braden, and City Councilor Sharon Durkin. Starting off today, just want to let folks know that this hearing is being recorded, and the public may watch this meeting via live stream, www.boston.gov/city-council-tv, and Xfinity 8, RCN 82, and FiOS 964. Today is Monday, December the 11th, 2023, and we are here today in the INL Chamber for a hearing for the following public safety grants, which I will now read into the record, two of them which will be for the Boston Fire Department, and the three remaining, which I will also read into the record so we can get right into it with the Boston Police Department right after that. So docket 1701, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $1,358,100 in the form of a grant, fiscal year 22 Assistance to Firefighter Grant Operation and Safety, awarded by the Federal Emergency Management Agency to be administered by the Boston Fire Department. This grant will fund the procurement of personnel protective equipment, bailout systems, and training required to use this PPE safely, as well as to fund cancer and cardiac screening programs to provide early clinical detection for members of the Boston Fire Department. 1705, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $47,890.47 in the form of a grant for fiscal year 22 and 2022 Fire Prevention and Safety Grant Programs, FP&S, awarded by the Federal Emergency Management Agency to be administered by the Boston Fire Department. This grant will fund the purchase of evidence management system and necessary supporting items, and provide one-time training to personnel of the Fire Investigative Unit on the use of this system. These dockets were referred to the City Council by the Mayor's Office on November 15, 2023. Would like to note that if members of the public would like to provide public testimony, they can do so by signing the sign-up sheet to my left as you come in the door. If members of the public would like to provide remote testimony via Zoom and have not signed up to do so, please email Christine, CHRISTINE, .O'Donnell, ODONNELL, at boston.gov to be able to do so. Members of the public may also provide testimony written comments to the committee at ccc.ps@boston.gov. That will be made part of the public record and shared with councilors. I'd also like to stress that we need information for people who are providing public testimony via video conference, especially if you are dialing in with a phone number or if you have an unrecognizable username. Please make sure that you state your official name for the record and as how it appears on Zoom. I'll be taking these grants from the Boston Fire Department first, so I'll defer to you, Kevin, as to how you'd like to make a presentation. I think we should start with 1705 first, given that it's the shortest, and then dive into the bigger one right after that, because it has two components.
Sure. Good morning. Thank you, councilors, for allowing us here today. My name is Kevin Coyne. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for Administration and Finance for the Boston Fire Department, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Joseph Shea, who's the Deputy Chief of Safety, Health and Wellness, Joseph Walsh, who's the Assistant Fire Marshal, Kevin McCarthy, Fire Lieutenant for Major Crimes Arson Unit, and thank you for conducting this hearing this morning. I can give you an overview of the impact of these grants and their importance. These grants will enable the Boston Fire Department to provide resources and provide the capital to expand training that enhances firefighter safety and the resources that will ensure firefighters' safety, health, and wellness is maintained. I can defer to my colleagues who are my subject matter experts this morning, who can answer specific questions that you have. And thank you again. We're happy to be here.
Thank you, Kevin. Chair at this time recognizes Kevin McCarthy, Fire Lieutenant, Major Case Unit of the Arson Unit, to talk about 1705. Welcome.
Yes. So basically, in 2024, there's going to be a national mandate for evidence collection storage. And with this grant, we're going to get ahead of that, and we're going to already have the system. Basically, the system is from the fire scene to the, if it goes to court or whatever, it has the evidence, locations where it's stored, the addresses. It's a paperless system with a barcode. We have fires that sometimes don't go to court for 5 or 6 years, and when the district attorney's office is looking for evidence, we will be able to scan a code and be able to retrieve that evidence. It has what's called like a clean room, which is a temperature-controlled room for the storage of any evidence that might be involved in an arson case. So it basically brings us up, to a national standard that's going to be mandated as of 2024. So this puts the Boston Fire Department kind of ahead of the game. The rest of the nation's going to be following early next year.
And then is Arson at headquarters right now? Or
Yes, it's at 920 Mass Ave on the backside of headquarters. So the our unit will be outfitted with the temperature-controlled room, evidence storage facility with coded barcodes to get into the room, and it just basically keeps track of who's looked at the evidence, where the evidence has gone, if it's gone to the chemist and he's looked at it, when it's returned, and it gets it right down to the second. So there's no paper trail, it's more barcode computer. It's a much easier system, and like I said, it's going to be a national standard as of next year, so puts us ahead of it.
So we'll have a state-of-the-art operation in an old, antiquated Southampton Strait facility, which is
Yes.
a bigger and broader discussion for my colleagues moving forward with respect to capital. It'd be great to see the fire headquarters get more than a spit shine, I guess. It's the building is old. So
Yeah.
you're going to have the ability to, so I guess, retrofit or put in a sort of a state-of-the-art clean room into an older.
Yes, my understanding is that the system comes in, it's, they bring in kind of like a small trailer type of a situation, and they'll outfit we have a couple of rooms that have been kind of put aside for the setup of this system, and it's going to make our job a lot easier as far as controlling the evidence. Like I said, sometimes it is years before we go to court, and to be able to have that evidence and show the trail of from the fire scene to court maybe 4 or 5 years later, and be able to account for where it's been, who's looked at it, who's had hands on it. It's quite a thing.
Yeah,
to
chain
have.
of custody is huge, obviously, in trial
Exactly.
preparation, so thank you. We've also been joined by our colleague, City Council Gigi Coletta. Council President, any questions of Lieutenant McCarthy at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the fire team that is present here, and thank you for the professional work that you've done on behalf of the residents. Also want to say thank you to you, Mr. Chair. I know this is your last hearing, but the fire department has never had a stronger leader on the city council than Councilor Flaherty. If there was a stronger leader in elected politics, his name was also Michael Flaherty, and it was your father. And I think that's what you got your advocacy for, is listening to your father and members of the Firefighters Union 718 at your house early morning, having coffee, listening to your father, talking to firefighters, but also talking to the union as well. So I want to say thank you to Councilor Flaherty for being there for the men and women on the fire department. Councilor Flaherty mentioned the fire headquarters, and I think that should be a top priority, is building a state-of-the-art fire headquarters. In my opinion, that's an embarrassment, that building. The fire department deserves a state-of-the-art facility, just like the police department has. I know that building very well. My uncle worked there for many years in the maintenance department. And I also received my advocacy and respect I've had for the fire department from my uncle, who was a decorated Vietnam veteran, United States Army. And I know we're talking about health and wellness of firefighters, and I know he had medical challenges leaving active duty in the Army and also serving in the fire department as well. So I want to recognize my uncle, Dennis Flynn, the contributions he's made to the city of Boston and to the fire department as well. Sorry to go on for a little longer, but Lieutenant, can you talk about, and Council if I already mentioned it, but how will this new inventory of evidence hold up in court or be preserved in an old building such as the fire department headquarters? Is there any logistic challenges, whether it's HVAC, whether it's any weather-related issues because of the roof, anything relating to infrastructure that could impact the evidence collected in a fire because of the old, because of the Mass Ave location?
I would assume that would be an issue for the company that's going to be installing the this system. Again, the system that we have now, we've made it work over the years. The issue as far as the court, custody, chain of custody, spoliation, as far as any of the evidence, if evidence is subjected to higher temperatures or not a controlled atmosphere, when you do finally get into court, you might be challenged on something like that. So my understanding is that with this system that they're going to come and install, there will be some construction issues, I'm sure, on how to get it to work in such an old building. But what we've been told is that when it is installed, it will be state of the art, as you said, in a very old building. But it'll help us immensely as far as keeping track of evidence that we have had. And like I said earlier, sometimes it's years before we actually end up in court. So it's nice to have that series of steps of where it came from the fire scene to where it is, where it's located. According to there's a few of these systems that have been put in across the country. It's called the Beast is the name of the system. And, our understanding is that they're going to make it work for where the FIU, where the Fire Investigation Unit is. They're going to try to make it work in our space.
Thank you. Is there a national organization that kind of provides guidance to cities and towns, fire departments, about the proper way to preserve evidence during a potential arson investigation? Are those guidelines or are those requirements?
Well, the National Fire Protection Agency association is like the four, they're the ones that write a lot of it's a guide right now. The NFPA 921 is a guide to fire investigations. But in that document is, there's a lot of different steps that, have to be followed. So it's not a standard yet. This system is going to become a standard in 2024 that municipalities are going to expect to have this type of storage system for evidence to go forward. But the NFPA is kind of the overseer of all fire departments in the nation.
Thank you. And I guess my final question, when that evidence is ready to go to the courthouse for review, potentially in a court case, how would that process work in terms of getting that evidence to the courthouse, working with the DA's office, working with the Attorney General's office, or working with the Boston Police, reviewing the evidence in a secure environment, whether that's at Mass Ave or at the courthouse? Are you also thinking about those types of issues as well?
Well, we have a department chemist that works out of headquarters, John Drugan, who came from the state police, who pretty much overhauled our evidence testing facility that's in headquarters. It's very clean area. So evidence that we collect at a fire scene, we submit to the chemist who does testing on it, and then he'll write a report, and then he also has peer review to validate what we're looking at. So any evidence, the actual physical evidence, very, very rarely would go to court. It would be more of the reports done by the chemist saying that there is, an accelerant or whatever might be. But so our evidence is delivered to the department chemist who does the testing on the evidence that we collect at fire scenes, and then does his report on it.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant McCarthy. Appreciate your answers, but more importantly, thank you for your commitment to the residents of the city.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Murphy, any questions of Lieutenant McCarthy on this issue?
Thank you, and thank you, Councilor Flaherty. I will also take a moment to thank you for your leadership these past 2 years, my first term here on the council, and you as chair of public safety. We worked on many things together, and I'll miss your institutional knowledge, but also your advocacy for all of the city employees, but especially our first responders who put their life on the line. And you have spoken and bravely pushed back when people have expected less of you, which you never would show up in this chamber, not giving your all. So I will miss you personally, but the city will miss you, so thank you. And the health and wellness of all of our employees, but especially our firefighters, making sure that their safety, but also the investigation piece, which was already explained. One of the things I've learned is that the police department and the fire department do an amazing job of looking for and applying for these grants, which does not come out of our budget directly, and this is a grant which I am here to support and will vote in favor of it Wednesday. But thank you to all those behind the scene who make sure that those, the firefighters who are investigating the crime, but also, out there on the front lines have exactly what they need. So no questions, just thank you for all you do. So thank you,
Thank you,
Chair.
Councilor Murphy. Chair recognizes Councilor Liz Braden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you also for your service. It's been an honour to serve with you this last few years, and I know we've still got some items on the list to do before the end of the week, so I appreciate your leadership and your dedication. Just one question. It's a grant for 47,000, like 48,000, and setting up I'm assuming is that just the management system to track everything, or does it actually include the climate control space as well, or is that all part of the parcel? It seems like a bargain for 47,000.
My understanding is that it is for the system itself and the facility, all in the same package, and the training on it.
The training on it. It certainly seems like a bargain. And in terms of the climate controlled room or the space, I'm just wondering, like, how many cases do we have to deposit in or contain in this? Like, I'm just thinking how many investigations are ongoing at any one time in regard to arson or whatever.
Well, I mean, in the city of Boston, probably 90% of the cases that we do, we investigate all fires in the city. They have to be investigated. Probably 90% of them are accidental, whether it be electrical or smoking or whatever, cooking. And then the 10% or so around that number is the arson cases. And we work with the DA's office, Suffolk County, prosecuting those cases. So in a given, I don't know the exact numbers. I can't say the exact numbers in a month of how many, but I can tell you in the last week we've had 3 different cases, nothing like newsworthy, so to speak, but smaller fires that were intentionally set. Mm-hmm. We have 2 canine, auxiliary canines that we deploy. One of the cases was just the canine didn't hit on anything, which says to us it was probably just an open flame, a lighter or something to get the materials going. So, you know, we do take the evidence, the idea of, it'll be all on shelves, and you'll be able to store multiple things on these shelves, and again, with the barcode, you'll be able to click and to say exactly where that piece of evidence is. And a lot of times the evidence can be, you know, half a piece of paper in size. Like if we have a big pour in a fire scene, what we'll do is we'll deploy the dog, and the dog will hit on certain areas, and we'll take small samples. So most of them go into like the size of they're clean paint cans that are sterile paint cans. So you might have a fire that burned down 2 triple deckers, and the evidence is only in maybe 1 or 2 paint cans.
And I can appreciate how important it is to not cross-contaminate your samples and get all the evidence mixed up. So I think this is a really important piece of infrastructure that you need to keep track of everything. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. Chair recognizes City Council Chairman Durkin.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I just want to say thank you so much for your service to the City of Boston. I know that there's not one counselor that can take and pick up everything that you've been working on, but I know that all of us together can take a piece of what you've been working on. And I know we've had quite a few conversations behind the scenes where you've told me procedurally, this is how things work. And we all really benefit from your leadership. So I hope we can still give you a call when we need your help. And I want to say, I don't have any questions about this specific docket, but just want to say thank you for investigating these fires. I know there's been numerous in my district over the past few years, which people have really benefited from knowing that there's some investigation component to things that are, to fires that may be set in my district. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Durkin. Chair recognizes City Councilor Gigi Coletta.
Thank you so much, Chair. I also want to just echo calls of thanks and gratitude to Councilor Flaherty. As a Boston kid, as a city kid growing up, and as a student of this world, I've learned a lot from you. First as an observer, and then as a staff member, and now as a city councilor. So just feel very lucky to be here. So thank you so much for everything you've done. And thank the fire department as well for everything you do. I've already learned a lot through the questioning here. I want to thank my colleagues for their thorough questions. I think the only other question that I have is just the frequency in which you might use the system. How many cases on average do you have where you might need to obtain evidence and store it, and I guess on a yearly basis, just to provide some clarity on that.
Like I said earlier, I think, you know, to average out, I would think probably, you know, maybe a half a dozen a month at least, and it varies, of course, different times of the year, but there are a lot of arson fires in the city, and like I say, a lot of times they're not, you know, on Channel 7 or whatever, because they're smaller issues, but it's, you know, it's a, whatever the cause might, whatever the reason might be for it, you know, people will pour something they're mad at whatever, for whatever reason. So a lot of times they're not really big fires, but they happen quite frequently. So, I mean, just as a guesstimate, I would say probably at least a half a dozen a month, and could be more, you know. And again, you know, they're not the ones you turn on the TV and you see this huge fire, but a lot of them are smaller incidents, and we do go through the same process as far as collecting evidence. And like we always say in the fire service, and my colleagues will know, you know, a lot of these fires start very small. You know, it could be just a little bit of gasoline or whatever might be poured, and next thing you know, you have multiple buildings completely involved. So we take them all very seriously, and with this system, again, it'll just bring us up to where we will be, and again, starting next year, early next year, it's going to be a national program that is all the department's going to need. So it seems like Boston is going to be ahead of the game, which is great.
That's great. We always love being a leader here in the city. And Councilor Flynn was talking about your facility needs, and I have to say that I have not been over to your headquarters. I would love to walk around with some of my colleagues and my new colleagues just to see what you are dealing with, if that's possible. But just want to say thank you so much, and I appreciate everything again that you all do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That will obviously conclude the.
I'm sorry?
That'll conclude
Okay, thank you.
17:05.
Thanks for your time.
Lieutenant, so I know you're extremely busy. On behalf of the City Council, obviously, Merry Christmas to you and all the McCarthys. And
thank you.
Let Timmy know we were asking for him. We
I
miss
will.
him. He's a stickler for basic city services here on the council. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sue. We appreciate it. You know, it's going to make the fire department even that much better. So we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin Coyne will now go back to 1701 and defer to you on the presentation.
So there are two components to 1701. One deals with the bailout gear, and I can give just a brief little synopsis of that, and then I'll refer to my colleague here. So bailout systems provide quick and efficient and safe methods for escaping a fire when standard methods of departure via stairs, elevator, or ladder are not permissible. The system allows firefighters to bail out of, for example, multi-story residences, apartment complexes, or office buildings through an unconventional means of exit, such as through a window, using three primary components that make up the system. And maybe my colleague can speak a little bit more proficiently on that.
Thank you.
Good morning. So the Sterling FCX escape system.
Just your name and affiliation for the record, for those that don't know.
Joseph Walsh, the Assistant Fire Marshal, and I also sit on the Joint Safety Committee.
That's it. Thank you, Joe.
So the Sterling FCX personal escape system, so it's a commercially purchased from a fire supply company. The particular unit that we want has been customized to the needs of Boston firefighters. It will be it's a 35-foot rope, weighs about 2.13 pounds. It's been customized so that it will integrate with all our PPE. It will be self-contained in one of the cargo pockets that all firefighters have in their bunker pants. It will connect to a belt. Essentially, it's a last resort escape method, either for rapidly deteriorating fire conditions or an out-of-air emergency. More or less, you find a substantial object within the building, you make your way to the window. If there's not a ladder there, that's your method. You go out onto the rope. We have 7 members right now that have had end-user training from the vendor, as well as they've gone through the FDNY training. The goal is to try to get this up and off the ground sometime in the spring. So in the coming months, the hope is to get a cadre of lead instructors and instructors ready to go, and then it will be in-service training that the companies will come down to Moon Island and get it each day.
So, Assistant Fire Marshal, so someone's either they're trapped in a room or they're on the roof, conditions have deteriorated to the point where there's no other way, they've basically got to shoot, right? So what's the rope tie off to?
You'll find a substantial object within the room. There are other methods. There's a hook that it has several different sides to it that you can bury it into a wall. You can hook it to, if you're carrying a tool, you can hook it to the tool. But you just get it anchored onto something substantial that won't go out the window with you. Okay. And you're able to more or less roll over the sill and get out. I won't go into great detail, but a brief Google search for the Black Sunday fire will give you a pretty good understanding of what this system does. Fire in the Bronx back in 2005, 6 firefighters had to jump. They were confronted with the decision to either stay here and burn to death or jump out of the window. On impact, 2 of them died. Another one died 5 years later from injuries sustained. It was life-altering for all the firefighters, but on the day of that fire, FDNY did not issue bailout systems. Subsequently, they did, so I think this is a great opportunity for us to be proactive rather than reactive. Certainly, as a chief that might be standing in front of a burning building someday, in the near future, hopefully, it gives me a peace of mind knowing that the firefighters will have this gear.
You get a matter of seconds, need to find an object, and then has this been tested maybe at the academy, or folks have tried this out?
It has. They've done demonstrations for both the training division and the safety committee. The prop is already built. We've watched it in action. It works. It's as a last resort, it is a great method to get a firefighter out of a building that's in trouble.
And will all of our firefighters be trained on it?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Council President, any questions for the Assistant Fire Marshal?
Thank you, Assistant Fire Marshal, for being here and for the work you're doing. Can you just clarify, would every firefighter be issued this rope?
Yes, each firefighter will have their own personal rope. The same way as for our self-contained breathing apparatus that we have our own face piece. It will be individual to that firefighter. They're not shared, they're not left on the fire truck and passed over at roll call or change of shift. Each firefighter will have one. There'll also be spares within the system so that if a firefighter damages one in the course of fighting a fire, or if they actually have to use the system, they can immediately be replaced.
And what is the process for wiping it down, cleaning it, storaging it when you're not using it?
So the plan right now is for it to be housed in the cargo pocket of the bunker pants, the pants that firefighters wear inside of burning buildings. It comes with a case that it goes in, and then there's some ability to mount the hook, and as the pockets open, and there's actually a square that comes out highly reflective. The intention is to throw that out the window, so if somebody sees that and you don't make it out, they know that somewhere up above a firefighter's either calling a mayday or is in trouble. But the pocket, as well as the case that it comes in, it's designed to be rugged to protect that rope. The rope is actually, it's rated for 18 kilonewtons. That's about 10 300-pound human beings. So it's fairly rugged. We intend to develop a standard operating procedure, which will also involve routine maintenance and inspection on it, come up with an interval for replacement.
What are the results been in New York City in terms of whether it's training or actual use? What have you learned from the New York Fire Department?
Well, they've had a few tragedies where firefighters have had to jump. That's certainly a terrible day. Speaking from my own experience, I've had to go out a window when things were not going well. Fortunately for me, a very heads-up officer ordered a ladder placed right as I got to the window. But they have had firefighters bail out on these systems. They fully believe in them. If you report to the command post before getting orders to go into the building, if you don't have your escape system, you're not allowed to go into the building. So that's the emphasis that they put on it. It's as far as firefighter safety goes, I think it's right up there with our self-contained breathing apparatus.
And I guess my final question, maybe it's somewhat unrelated. Does every fire truck, when the ladder is in operation, does every ladder able to reach a roof in every traditional neighborhood? Do we have any ladders that are not able to reach a top of a roof in certain neighborhoods?
So that would depend on a lot of variables. Right now, our aerial ladders are 100 foot in length. That's measured from the ground to the tip of the aerial. As we get pushed back further and further from the building, we have less horizontal reach, so a lot of that area will be eaten up by that. Typically, 6th to 7th floor, depending on how far away from the building we are. With the aerial, and then for a complement of ground ladders, each ladder truck carries 35-foot ground ladder, a 40-foot ground ladder, 50-foot. Those are all extension ladders, and there's also a 20-foot straight wall ladder, as well as a 16-foot straight wall ladder.
But when the sidewalk is pushed further out into the street, which is kind of which is one of the things we're seeing across
I think I might know where you're going with this, Council.
But
It certainly complicates fire ground operations.
well, so it complicates operations, but what I'm concerned with is the more we move the sidewalk out to the street, even if it's a 3-level building, I want to make sure, I really want to guarantee, I want to make sure that our ladders are able to reach the roof. And maybe it's not the time to have the conversation here, and that's fine, but I do want to guarantee from the city that every ladder will be able to reach a roof, and if that's not the case, I do want to know about it. I think that's a critical public safety issue. It's something I'm probably going to focus on going forward, but I'm not asking you to respond, but that's something in January I'm going to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Chair recognizes Councilor Murphy on the bailout system.
Thank you. Again, just important that we pass this grant to make sure you have the proper tools, equipments to be safe. something I was going to ask, which I think piggybacks well off of what Councilor Flynn was just saying, are the bike lanes which then put cars parked, pushed further out away from the curb, has it been an issue, or do you see it being an issue where then equipment then can't reach the burning house or building?
It certainly does happen. Obviously, an older city like we have here in Boston, wires, trees are all complications that we've been dealing with. We're the oldest fire department in the country, and we've probably been dealing with them for that long. But the bike lanes do add another layer of complication. The further back that we're pushed, obviously that's more ladders that need to be extended to make the roof. On the side streets, it's certainly not an issue there, but on like the more busier thoroughfares, the main drags in the city, we are finding ourselves between the frontage on the building, the sidewalk, and then the bike lane, and then parked cars. If you're making the roof, you just barely get the tip of the aerial over the parapet wall. And
Aren't you putting a firefighter in more danger too if you're like dangling, trying to reach at the top?
I wouldn't recommend
Yeah,
that as a method to get on a roof dangling.
Yeah.
Be a little bit outside my box.
Right.
I think I would probably reprimand a firefighter that did that.
No, but if you know you're close and you're almost close,
Oh, certainly.
and you're trying
There
to fix,
is-
yeah.
There
you're
are
in-
times when
of
a
course.
firefighter will bridge the gap and take a little bit
course,
of a
yeah.
leap and probably create a lot of heartburn for the chief officer in front of that building.
And I appreciate that Councilor Flynn is going to bring this up, but in the next term, we are just hours away from this term ending, but were you part of conversations with the chief of streets in these pilot programs that are now, or permanent street bike lanes and just different changes to our traffic patterns? It's one thing to be stuck in traffic and being annoyed. It's another thing for first responders. I know I've spoken with EMS and others also who it adds time to their calls.
And that's something that I've heard from a lot of the company offices in the field currently. One of the locations, Cummings Highway, is a place where they said it's very difficult to travel up Cummings Highway with the new bike lanes, and at rush hour, it can take the companies an extended period of time to get to their emergencies. I was not part of that. I don't know if prior to the position that I hold, prior to my arrival, if there were other conversations, but I do not have any knowledge of that.
And lastly, last summer, the state, but also the Boston Fire invited elected officials to join them on the common. There was a simulation with the equipment and going through different fire procedures, which I did join. I know some of my colleagues joined us, but I mean, it was a fun day, but also reminded you that it's very important that you have the proper equipment. So, and also being at the ceremony with making sure the fire hoses are safe, everything that we can do in Boston to make sure that our firefighters are safe and that the residents have a better chance. Definitely something that I support. So just thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Chair recognizes Councilor Braden on the bailout system.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you attach the rope to something that's going to hold, and do they rappel out of down the side of the building, or how do you get down?
So the equipment will have a descended device. Basically, it's like a brake that's handheld. So as you get outside of the window, you'll start to play the rope out. It has a built-in safety mechanism that won't allow you to accelerate too fast, but it will allow you to in a controlled descent down to the ground or to a safe floor if the rope's not long enough to reach the ground.
How many floors will it?
So it's a 35-foot rope. That's typically good for about 4 floors.
Yeah.
But the goal is we could have a fire at East India Row, which is a high-rise building. It's not sprinkled, so a firefighter getting in trouble in a building like that would not be impossible, but it would be impossible to carry enough rope to 40
obviously
floors to
it
the
becomes
ground.
more of an encumbrance.
So the goal there would be to get to a lower floor that is safe, that's not an ideal H environment.
Yeah. Well, we pray that we don't have to use it too often.
Absolutely,
but
like I said,
important.
it's a last resort.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. Chair recognizes Councilor Sharon Durkin.
Hi, thank you so much for this conversation. Being unfamiliar with most bailout systems, I'll have to take a look at the YouTube video, but what I can tell you is that from hearing this is that my impression is that this is like an incredibly needed part of what you guys have access to and what our, I did want to ask, obviously a lot of our nearby fire departments and other municipalities don't have access to the same resources that the Boston Fire does. What is the impact of the Boston Fire Department going to other municipalities, and will this help, the greater region?
So one of the things, and it's kind of maybe an unofficial policy, but and I won't speak specifics, but many times when the Boston Fire Department does something, the departments sort of around us do follow suit, and that's great. We're the oldest fire department in the nation. We certainly should set the trends and kind of control the direction that the fire service, at least in this area, goes in. So I feel that once we get these systems in place, that there probably will be an interest by many of the other surrounding communities if they don't already have them. It's hit or miss. Some departments do, some don't. Most big cities do. This has been, several firefighters have been working on this project for quite some time, so it was finally the right time. We were able to get it pushed through, and the 7 firefighters that I said, they've had the end user training. They've attended the FDNY Academy and got their training on bailout systems. They've put many, many hours into this, and I think it's certainly something that those firefighters should be proud of.
And once you have access to these resources, how quickly will this new policy be in place and these new systems be in place?
The goal is to start the training by the springtime. There'll have to be an SOP, some policies that we'll have to come up with. If I had to estimate, I would hope by the summertime we could have the program completely up and running as each company gets trained. It's been a little while since I've been an adjunct instructor. I forget the exact time frame with holiday breaks, but to get all the companies through the training, it takes a few months. It will be done in service, probably on the working days at the Fire Academy. So that's really what we're limited by is, we have 33 firehouses across the city to get the training to. You can't bring 33 firehouses worth of firefighters down to the academy every single day. So it's a scheduling problem that we run into.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Durkin. Chair recognizes Councilor Gigi Coletta on the bailout system.
Thank you so much. And I neglected to express gratitude for your department's work yesterday in the North End, where there were 13 individuals displaced on Thatcher Court. So I just want to say thank you for that, and they're all safe, thank God. So this is pretty straightforward, and again, a lot of thorough questions from my colleagues. I guess just looking at the amount, so it's $1.3 million, and this is for a one-time purchase for every single individual in the fire department. Does that include extras in the event that one breaks, or, okay, if you can just break that down of how
the intention would be, yes, that there would be spare units available strategically located throughout the city or on some of our resupply equipment, just in case, like you said, if one got lost, damaged, if a defect was to be discovered, they could go replace it right away rather than have to take that firefighter offline for interior firefighting for that particular tour.
Okay, great, thank you. And this grant also funds cancer and cardiac screening programs to provide early clinical detection of members. What is the specific amount for that part of this grant?
I would have to refer to my colleague, Deputy Chief Shea, on that. He's covering that
Ken, you get
portion.
the stats on that, right?
It's about 800,000.
800?
Yeah, it's about approximately 800,000. I'm sorry, it's about 800,000 for the cancer screening component and cardiac screening.
Okay, great, thank you.
For the bailout system, approximately $286,000 is to set up the curriculum and training, and the balance of $487,000 is for the actual bailout system itself. So they're approximately $350 a piece, times 15,000 firefighters, and that's the number we come up with for that.
Great, thank you. And just thinking long-term as well, so new members that join the department, do we expect this to be a one-time grant, or do we anticipate more money coming from the federal government to cover their expenses?
I think it's, one of the grants that we'll continue to monitor and look. A lot of times we see with these, federal grants that they will supplement and augment, what they'll cover for. So, it may be under the same heading, but they could be adding additional, safety or training equipment to that grant. So, this one, we have 2 years, I believe, to spend this money, and then, it will come up again for renewal.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Gletta. Chair recognizes, and we've also been joined by my colleague, City Councilor Brian Worrell. Brian, any questions of the fire department on the bailout proposal?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our firefighters for your service. Just a couple weeks ago, you guys were in action over on Ellington Street, and was able to get everyone out safely. And just want to say thank you for your service. My question was around the cancer and cardiac screening programs. Could you just kind of just walk us through how a firefighter would be able to receive the screening programs? Is it something that they sign up through the fire department, or is it something like a credit to their insurance? Can you just walk us through how that works?
So that'll be a great segue into the second component. So
the second component.
Why don't you take the lead on
Sure.
introducing the second component?
Okay.
And then we can address the councilor's question and then go right into questions.
Thanks for having me here
Thank
today.
you, Joe.
According to a study on by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, cancer is the leading cause of death among firefighters. When compared to the general population, firefighters are at a higher risk of certain types of cancers, such as lung, esophageal, brain, skin, testicular, and prostate. We are 9% more likely to die of cancer and 14% more likely to be diagnosed with cancer. The nonprofit Firefighter Cancer Support Network reports that 66% of career firefighter line-of-duty deaths were cancer-related in the period from 2002 to 2019. In 2017, that percentage increased to 70%. 18% of line-of-duty deaths from the same period were cardiac-related. These alarming rates have compelled the Boston Fire Department to become proactive rather than reactive when it comes to the health of our firefighters. To his credit, one of the first official acts of the former Fire Commissioner Joe Finn was to create the Safety, Health, and Wellness Division to increase cancer awareness and physical well-being by encouraging firefighters to adopt safe work practices that lower the exposure to cancer-causing substances. However, despite our best efforts, firefighters will always be at a higher exposure risk due to the nature of the job. Recently, we have learned that our bunker gear we rely on to protect us may actually be causing us harm due to the chemical properties used to make the gear water repellent. With these known statistics and new knowledge, it is critical that the city helps to fund these early detection body scans. This funding would allow us to use the scans as a valuable tool to aid in the prevention of a loss of a loved one and a decreased cost to taxpayers by helping to minimize the cost of a firefighter's medical care.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Joe Shea. I'm going to obviously take Chair's prerogative, and I'm going to ask Sam Dillon from Local 718, maybe he can go down and offer public testimony on both of these dockets, and then we're going to get into questions from the council. We'll start with Councilor Worrell's question on the screening. Good morning. Just for the record, Sam, your name and affiliation.
Good morning. My name is Sam Dillon. I'm a firefighter with the Boston Fire Department. I also serve as the president of Boston Firefighters Local 718. Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak on these important matters in front of you, your colleagues. Thank you to my colleagues from the Boston Fire Department. The union's very pleased to see this much involvement and this much attention being paid to these matters from the fire department. We appreciate that. And if I could just take a moment, Mr. Chair, I share your sentiment on it is very fitting that the final committee you would oversee is us and is the Boston Fire Department and is Local 718. Not just you, but your entire family has a long and proud history of service to this city, to City Hall, and to the Boston Fire Department. And on behalf of Boston firefighters, past and present and future, thank you very much for your advocacy and for the passion that you brought to your role and the passion that you brought to advocating for Boston firefighters. Taking these issues in order, the grant to secure the evidence funding for FIU is incredibly important. For a little historical piece, the city of Boston years ago was confronted with one of, if not the worst, organized arson rings in history. Our FIU, our Arson Investigation Unit, is an essential piece of the Boston Fire Department, and they need to have the funding and they need to have the resources available to them to do the jobs that they need. And I was very thankful that some councilors kind of use that as a segue into another incredibly important conversation, which is the state of our headquarters building and some of the facilities on the Boston Fire Department. We do need that situation addressed. It's great to see funding being put into some of our headquarters components, namely today, FIU. That needs to be an ongoing discussion. And it's not just the building itself. This is a great opportunity to highlight the work that's done by the Boston Fire Department and the members of some of our subordinate support and investigation units. The Boston Fire Department does a lot more than just the members that you see out riding the fire trucks. We have arson investigators, we have administrative personnel, we have fire investigators. There is a whole network of headquarters personnel who provide invaluable essential services to our department and to our city. And in the next coming legislative session for this council, there need to be ongoing conversations about the work that they provide and reinforcing our department's ability to recruit and retain capable, qualified, motivated people to fill those positions. It's an essential topic, and I look forward to addressing it. On the bailout systems, again, this is an essential piece of equipment. Best way to describe it, this is an insurance policy. As a firefighter, you hope that you never need to touch this thing, other than training. You need to be familiar with it, but you hope that you never have that incident where you run out of air in a burning building, you become trapped, you become disoriented. You hope you never have to use it, but on that day that one of our people does, they have to have it there. And I'm surprised that we've been able to make it this far without having this in place. We have had members who have had to bail out of very dangerous situations, and they haven't had this afforded to them. They were met with some injury. Fortunately, they weren't killed. Now that this has come to the forefront, now that it's being discussed here, we have to get this done, because the next firefighter, the next one of our members who has to bail out, who doesn't have this afforded to them, we can't say we didn't know. We can't say that we didn't address this, so we need to get this done. Now, on the final portion, the cancer initiative, the early detection, occupational hazards, as you just heard Chief Shea testify, occupational hazards, particularly occupational cancer, is killing our firefighters at a rapid rate. We know this to be true. The statistics don't lie. We have to start taking this on. It's beginning to permeate the culture of the fire department. We're tired of looking over our shoulder. We're tired of seeing our friends, our brothers and sisters diagnosed with these cancers. Peeling back the curtain on the numbers a little bit, when you go into the specifics, we have firefighters beneath the age of 40 years old getting diagnosed with cancers that you just don't see in the general public. Firefighters are dying because of occupational cancer, and there is not enough that we can do to try to stem the tide. We embrace this profession for its dangers and for its risks. We proudly embrace that. Local 718, the Boston Fire Department, we are imploring the city of Boston and this council to join us in this fight and take this on, because I am tired of seeing firefighters die when they otherwise don't have to. Our job is dangerous enough. Please help us take on this fight. Any questions?
Nothing here, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilor.
So to Councilor O'Reilly's question, to kick off the questions in terms of how does one go about screening? Is it mandated? Is it voluntary? Is it quarterly? Is it yearly? Type of thing?
It's usually grant-driven. So in the past, what we usually did was we'd open it up to firefighters, that were 50 years and older. And then if we still had spots, we'd lower it down to 40 and over, and then it would trickle down. If we had any more spots, it would be first come, first served. But like President Dillon has mentioned, we've been seeing cancers in young men in their early 30s with kids, about to have kids. some crazy cancers. So we would like to have it available for everybody. And we can't mandate it, but I think that we will, I think if we push it, sell it to the guys, the problem is we have a young department now, or a younger department, and they think they're bulletproof, and they don't realize until they get that diagnosis and they're kicking themselves that why didn't I get that? So we are, it's great to see this grant and the number of screenings that are available, would be available. It would be for everybody.
So the 800 covers the whole fire department?
It doesn't yet,
Okay.
but that's the hope that we would open it. We wouldn't just limit it to, certain ages or certain, we would open up to as many people as we can. I'd love to increase it if I could.
Right, and what's that gap, like in terms of if we needed a dollar amount to cover everybody, what would that dollar amount be?
Well, 370, that's not even a third of our department right now, a quarter of our department right now. So we'd have to probably,
At least double the amount.
with it. You know?
Each one of the tests, Counselor, that, this grant would provide for come at varying costs. Some of the more advanced cancer screening tests, can run in the thousands, where some of the, preventative ones, could be just several $100s. So, it really depends upon the needs of the department and whatever that, firefighter, the risk that they're presenting. So we're continuing, as I think both of my colleagues have said here, is, we're always looking for additional funding to support this. The occupational health, safety, and wellness, of all the Boston firefighters is super important. This is, certainly great money that, is not, coming out of the city's, pocket at this time. But there may be a time, in the near future where we'll need to augment this funding to make sure that we have enough monies to cover all the testing needed for all the members.
Thank you for that. No further questions, Chair.
Thank you. Council President, any questions on screenings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you to the panel for the professional testimony and for the important work you're doing in the city. I guess my question, listening to President Sam Dillon, but also working with Sam on issues impacting returning veterans as well, coming back from service overseas. The biggest federal legislation impacted over the last 30 years was the PACT Act, as you probably know, and that's for veterans that were exposed to burn pits in the Persian Gulf area, or rubber, or various gases. And I had the opportunity to go to D.C. and testify in favor of it when it was recently passed. So I was there with Commissioner Santiago from the Veterans Department. But what impact does this have, knowing that we have a critical issue for firefighters, but also a lot of these firefighters as well are veterans? It almost exacerbates the problem as well. And I highlighted the PACT Act specifically because, this is a significant and major problem facing the city, firefighters and their families. But is there something this body can do, the mayor can do, in terms of funding, in terms of medical care, in terms of services, counseling, quality of life? Is there something that this city can do for firefighters dealing with cancer, just the way the federal government dealt with returning veterans, helping returning veterans exposed to chemicals and gas? They implemented the PACT Act. What possibly could the city of Boston do? I know what the fire department can do, but what else can the city of Boston do to elevate this issue and to make sure that those firefighters and their families, their concerns are addressed?
The only thing I can think of right now, that's a discussion I would love to have with Sam and yourself sometime. But I'd love to increase the screenings. That would go a long way.
So with the screens, I think you mentioned it, are we screening a spouse as well? We're screening the firefighter. Is it necessary to screen the spouse? Is it necessary to screen or to provide services to a firefighter's family?
When you say, we just recently reached out to Dana-Farber. Actually, Dana-Farber reached out to us. We've kind of building a bridge with them, and they're offering us some a firefighter and their family counseling as far because there's a lot to it. I mean, it's financial. It's you obviously you're out injured when you're being treated for cancer, but there's other things that they can't work their second job, or maybe they can't work overtime, so it becomes a financial burden. There's all kinds of other things, but we're building bridges with Dana-Farber and a couple other hospitals that I'm hoping are gonna come a long way with easing this burden for them.
The reason I kind of focused on issues impacting veterans, I know Vietnam veterans, when they returned, especially Vietnam veterans exposed to Agent Orange, when they had kids, when they had children, their children were born with higher rates of certain illnesses, certain diseases, or certain medical conditions compared to the general population. Are we thinking about that type of issue, knowing that young firefighters are exposed to these chemicals now? Are we thinking about the impact it's having on their families? And if we're not, are we able to kind of elevate the discussion so maybe Boston can lead the way in how we treat and show our support, not just for the firefighter, but for their family?
There has been some thought put into it. I know when I was a firefighter, even back when I was a firefighter, they would always tell us, when would go to relieve someone at a building, at a building fire at shift change, or if we were detailed to a different firehouse, don't put your bunker gear in the back of your truck, because guys weren't thinking that way. So that's one of the things that we would tell them is you don't want to bring your bunker gear home. You don't want to put it in a car where you're going to have your family. Keep it in the trunk. Keep it contained in a plastic bin. So there has been some thought. I don't know if there's ever been any studies as far as, if things, cancers or anything like that has been passed down to the children. But if there has been a study, I'd like to look at it.
Yeah, I'd love to see a study. I'm not sure one has been done throughout the country. I remember in the 1990s, the first Gulf War, when veterans were coming back, the federal government almost didn't believe them that they had these higher rates of respiratory-related issues, and they called it Gulf War syndrome, as if they're kind of making this stuff up. But it's important to document these issues in women veterans coming back as well, from the first Gulf War, from the current Operation Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, but women veterans have higher risk of challenges during birth in their children. So I guess my point is we really need to continue talking, but to factor in what impact this has on firefighters and their families. But I respect the work you're doing, and thank you.
One thing I would love to do is if any of the councils would ever want to meet and we could go through one of the newer firehouses to see what changes have been made when you compare it to some of our older firehouses. And I think you'd be amazed at just what is expected of a brand new building now as opposed to what the majority of the firehouses look like. It's, I mean, you got to look at it this way too. Those fire trucks backing in the benzene, that's one of the biggest cancer causes. It's all over the house. We're breathing that in. That's on our pillows. That's on our utensils.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to do that. I had the opportunity to attend the opening of the firehouse on Columbus Avenue, kind of on the border of Jamaica Plain and Roxbury there about a year ago. I know it was built during the Walsh administration and through the support of Joe Finn as well. But yeah, maybe after the new year, I'd love to take some of the new colleagues to check it out. So we'll stay in contact. I don't have any further questions. Again, thank you for your professional leadership here. Just filling in now for Councilor Flaherty, the chair. The vice chair calls on Councilor Murphy. Councilor Murphy, do you have any questions?
Sure, yes, thank you. Cancer screenings are a must, but you just touched on it. I was going to mention how President Dillon and also Commissioner Burke, who's been in here for many hearings, and when we were at the groundbreaking of Meeting House Hill, just talked about the location of, you know, the fumes near the kitchens, and like you just mentioned, that the new firehouses are built smarter and recognize that this really is an issue that we have to address. So thank you for saying that. And I know the first two grants we were talking about headquarters, which obviously is something I'll always advocate for, but the firehouses where the trucks are pulling in, and you mentioned even the, you know, the equipment when you take it off, the making sure that we were funding even the washing machines, right? Seems very basic, but it's something we have to continue to do here on the council. Would just like to know, does the City of Boston recognize cancer deaths as a line of duty death? Is that something that is recognized? At firefighter cancer deaths, is it a formal
Line of duty?
Yeah.
Correct. Yes, I believe so nationwide. They're reported as line of duty.
Okay. If we could just check into that, because I'm pretty sure that the City of Boston doesn't recognize it. Or also, like, how far back, and you touched on, Councilor Flynn, like, maybe as a veteran or a family's, you know, how far out do we make that reach? Making sure that if you're putting your life on the line, that it's not just going into a burning building, it can be bringing those chemicals back home, and something that we should just make sure we're looking into. And hopefully we will be at more ribbon cuttings or, you know, funding more of these where we're updating our firehouses. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Before I go on to Councilor Braden, I should clarify the record. I am not the vice chair of this committee, so should not have mentioned that. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn. So in terms of the screening, I'm just wondering, firefighters have to take an annual physical every year? Do they have an annual physical every year?
We have it built into our contract that if they present a physical, if they present their PCP, that the blood work and certain things have been done, that it increases their pay for the year.
So is there a way that, you know, the annual physicals could incorporate some of these cancer screenings, like women have to go for a mammogram, or we do stool samples for colon cancer screenings or whatever? Is there a way to try and work with the insurers and whatever to cover that extra little piece of...
Something to look into.
Because if you're going for your annual physical in any case, then that's the time to...
See, the problem is with the state of healthcare now, I mean, you're lucky if you get your PCP to put their hands on you.
Yeah.
They draw your blood, they measure you to see if you shrunk, see how much weight you've put on. Other than that, they're not doing too much. So these are in-depth screenings, and we found a lot. We just in the skin cancer alone last year, I think they referred over 25 to 30 for further look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate the challenges of our primary healthcare system at the moment. Councillor Flynn, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Braden. Council Murphy or Council Braden, final comment before we move on?
No, I will be supporting both of these dockets. That's fine. Thank you.
Just
Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you.
And these are very serious issues, and we want
Absolutely.
to support you in any way we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the dedicated and professional firefighters that are here. We don't have any further questions on these dockets. You are excused. I know the chair will take this matter up on Wednesday, and I look forward to supporting it, and I know the chair is going to bring it to a vote, and I know my colleagues, and especially the chair, will be supporting it as well. So again, I want to say thank you to the Fire Department for being here and for the exceptional service your team provides to the residents of Boston. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too. You too. Do we, on these dockets, do we have any public testimony at this time from anyone here or on Zoom? We don't have any public testimony on Zoom or in the chamber. At this time, could I ask the Boston Police Department please to come forward for the next discussion?
Jerry. And we are going to move into docket 1704, 1749, and 1796. And I'll obviously defer it to you, Jerry. And I know that, is BPD on all three of them or just two? Because I also see Shumane is here as well. So Shumane is here on docket. That must be Homeland Security, that's the 1796 one. Okay, got it. Thank you. All right, so we'll take 1704. I'm going to read them into the record, and I'll throw it over to you, Jerry. 1704, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $250,000 in the form of a grant fiscal year 23 COPS accreditation project awarded by the United States Department of Justice to be administered by the Police Department. This grant will fund accreditation process through the purchase of Power DMS to document objective evidence of CALEA, C-A-L-E-A, and MPAC, M-P-A-C requirements. And then docket 1749, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $175,000 in the form of a grant fiscal year 23 COPS CD micro grant community policing development awarded by the United States Department of Justice to be administered by the Boston Police Department. This grant will fund building trust and justice to be administered by the Police Department, and it's also building trust and legitimacy with community buildings. With COPS community development microfunding, the Boston Police Department will hire 2 full-time brick data analysts to work with the Bureau of Field Services and 11 district captains and community service officers. The Bureau of Community Engagement to help connect with an even wider range of community partners, other bureaus that will add data and information to the community CompStat meetings, and the Office of Research and Development Civilians Hub Program Coordinator. We'll also operate 6 district hub tables convening per week throughout the neighborhoods of Boston that was referred to the committee for the Mayor's office on November 29, 2023. So with that, I'll turn it right over to Jerry to get into it from your team, and great to see you guys.
Thank you, Councilor. My name is Jerry Cahill. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of the Bureau of Intelligence and Analysis. First, I want to thank you for your continued service to the City of Boston over the years, especially your support of the Boston Police Department. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the grant that I'm coming to is the COPS Micro Grant Community Policing Development. The Boston Police Department is committed to building trust within all our neighborhoods of Boston through enhanced community policing strategies, including continuous community engagement, data and other information transparency, increased partnership collaborations and problem-solving efforts, and internal external system improvements and professionalism. One tool that will help us move closer towards these goals is our implementation of Community CompStat, which we would love to convene over every neighborhood in the city of Boston. We've started already. We've done 3 since last year, this year I should say, and we want to continue that throughout all the neighborhoods of Boston. The BPU will accomplish this through this grant in the category of building trust and legitimacy with the community building. The goal of Community CompStat is to take the same sense of empowerment and problem solving from our internal CompStat meetings, which members of the councils have gone to in the past, which we hold every 2 weeks, and bring this into the community. Community CompStat will be implemented at the neighborhood level. In this way, not only will we further strengthen our ongoing efforts to engage with the community, we have an opportunity to familiarize the public with the good work done by not only the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, but the other bureaus within the Boston Police Department. Through this grant, 2 data analysts will provide data and analytical findings necessary to elicit dialogue with the community. Key partners of this will be the City of Boston, the Mayor's Office, the City Council, and other City of Boston agencies, community nonprofits, and residential groups. Like I said before, we've done 3 of these in the neighborhoods trying to get these implemented. We've had positive feedback from this, and on behalf of the commissioner who's put this forward, we want to continue to add these to all the neighborhoods, and with this funding, adding the analysts that specifically will deal with the Community CompStat process, it will help us greatly. Thank you.
Any questions of this program from colleagues?
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. I was following your words closely, and I'm also very familiar with the proposal and plan. I don't have any questions, although I'd just like to say I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and just want to acknowledge the professional work, Deputy, that your team is doing in working with the public, informing the public, and engaging with the public. So just want to say thank you to the men and women that work with you, Deputy.
Thank you very much, Councilor.
Thank you, Commissioner. My administrative liaison, Marcus, heading superintendent, and obviously Maria Chivas, so I got a little distracted. So welcome to you guys as well. And you guys are going to be, you're here on 1749 as well, right?
That is correct. The grant for Kalia and Impact.
Great. Chair recognizes Councilor Erin Murphy on this docket 1704.
Thank you. Also, no direct questions. Just thank you for seeking out these grants and continuing to want to reach out to the communities and have more of a dialogue and have the tools needed to continue the community policing and making sure our residents are safe. So in full support of this, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Braden, anything on docket 1704?
And just for those folks listening, could you perhaps enlighten us about the evidence of CAL, EA, and MPAC requirements? Like what exactly are those meant to? What's the requirements?
That's a separate grant.
This
is a separate grant?
Separate grant?
Yes, from what he spoke on. I'll be speaking on this.
You'll be speaking to that one, okay. And then are we specifically just talking to 1704 at this point?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councilor Brian, we're on 1704. Any questions of Superintendent Gale?
All right, just to be clear, 1704 is the grant will fund accreditation process through the purchase of Power DMS, correct?
That's correct.
All right, this is not the hub table yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
No, I think this is...
Yeah, it's part of it.
This is the first one's the Community CompStat piece with the 2 analysts, I'm sorry.
Okay, because that's 1749,
right?
right?
Okay, hold on one second here, Councilor. Right, the one that we read into the record was 1704, message in order to accept and expend a grant of $250,000 in the form of a grant, fiscal year 23 COPS accreditation program awarded to the United States Department of Justice administered by the Police Department. This grant will fund accreditation process to the purchase of powered DMS to document objective evidence of CALEA, C-A-L-E-A, and MPAC, MPAC requirements.
That's an accreditation grant from COPS.
Yep.
The one that Deputy Cahill was speaking about was around community ComStat. And so if you have a question for community ComStat, this is the time to ask the community ComStat question. And if you have a question about accreditation, we should let Deputy Eddings speak first.
So I'll do that. So I'll introduce Deputy Superintendent Marcus Eddings to introduce that one. So we'll have both on the floor, and then we'll go from there. That work for you, Council?
It works.
Perfect.
All right,
Well,
good morning.
good to see you.
My name is Marcus Eddings. I'm a superintendent with the Boston Police Department. I'm assigned to the Office of the Police Commissioner. And I'll echo his sentiment earlier. Thank you for your service and advocacy for the Boston Police Department.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for allowing us to come and speak about the importance of the grant towards police accreditation. Police Commissioner Michael Cox has made police accreditation a top priority for the Boston Police Department due to its numerous benefits. First, Commissioner Cox recognizes that accreditation is essential for building a strong relationship between the Boston Police Department and all 16 neighborhood communities we serve broadly through community policing, and more specifically through community engagement, transparency, partnership collaborations, and professionalism. Second, accreditation ensures that the department meets the highest standards of professionalism, ethics, and accountability, increases public trust and confidence in the police department while reducing potential liability risk. Third, accreditation also requires the implementation of best practices to ensure that officers receive continuous training. It leads to the implementation of consistent policies and procedures in ensuring the fair and unbiased treatment of individuals. One tool that will help us move closer towards accreditation is the support of the U.S. DOJ COPS Office Grant Fund to be utilized for the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement, also known as CALEA, and the Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission, also known as MPAC. With COPS accreditation grant funds, the Boston Police Department will initiate the accreditation process through the purchase of Power DMS to document objective evidence of CALEA and MPAC requirements. All three engagements will provide the Boston Police Department with a supportive cloud-based accountability system that will be intuitive upon setup, allowing for continuous compliance after initial accreditation. The Boston Police Department will also hire a part-time accreditation consultant to support multiple internal processes and external interfaces with both commissions and Power DMS. The accreditation process will allow internal inspections and audits that will provide an effective means of regularly assessing the department's efficiency, effectiveness, policy adequacy, and compliance. The inspection and audit process will compare the department's formal expectations as codified in our special orders with rules and regulations and policies and procedures to observe performance of systems and units in the field, district, and specialized units. The areas to be inspected include the Boston Police Department's field and investigative operations, personnel, facilities, property and equipment, and administrative functions. Accreditation will increase the trust with the community through transparency and accountability. The courts and the community will be more trusting of the Boston Police Department's actions and decisions, and both sworn and civilian personnel will benefit from increased trust between the Boston Police Department and community residents. The goal of the accreditation process will be to increase the Boston Police Department's effectiveness and efficiency, to recognize areas needing improvement, and to address and identify weaknesses through corrective and preventive actions. The Boston Police Department endeavors to ensure voluntary compliance, conformity and uniformity in administration, enforcement, and investigations. The Police Department will promote efficiency by revising, developing, and implementing protocols, procedures, and ideas that are applicable and beneficial to the department. The Boston Police Department has applied for and was awarded $250,000 for a 2-year grant timeline that will begin on October 1st of 2023 and will go through September 30th of 2025. Key partners will include the City of Boston, the Mayor, the City Council, other City of Boston agencies, CALEA, MPAC, Power DMS, community leaders, BPD sworn and civilian staff, including command staff, district captains, specialized unit commanders, and civilian directors. And in closing, by prioritizing police accreditation, Police Commissioner Cox is demonstrating his commitment to excellence, transparency, and accountability within the Boston Police Department. He's also establishing a well-respected and efficient police department that serves and protects the community to the best of his abilities.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Anything to add, Maria, on any of the testimony?
No, I just wanted to be here in case they had any questions, and I
Awesome.
could just,
Perfect. So both dockets are on the floor. I'm going to start with City Council Orrell to speak to both 1704 and 1749, then we'll go backwards, and because I know Council Braden had questions interrelated.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your service. My question is, you guys mentioned, is it Superintendent Cahill?
Deputy.
Deputy Cahill. 3 community CompStats. Where, what was learned, and was there any measurable outcomes that came from those meetings?
So the first ones we had, the first one was in B3, second one was in C11, the third one was E13. We continue to learn every time we go. We actually, first time we did a survey at the end. Second time we actually did a pre-survey and a survey afterwards. The people that came could fill out. We're just trying to better understand what the community wants. There's so many different communities through the city. What one community wants, another community, not say doesn't want, but might have a different want. So that's the biggest thing I think we're trying to learn is, as we go to the communities, what are the community concerns, and make sure that the Boston Police Department are looking at these concerns so that we can make a difference in their community.
And then when in your first 3 meetings, who else was at the table? Like, was there any outside organizations or external partners that the police department works with was at that community conference?
We had, I believe we had members from like the BEST team talk about mental health issues there. We had community, like I said, community partners. It varied different times. As I said, this has been a learning process, and we're trying to make it the best process as possible. We've reached out to other cities to see how they're doing it. We have, I think, a meeting, I think it's either next week or the week after Detroit's doing this. So we're trying to partner with other cities as well to make sure we're giving the best product possible.
Awesome. I would love to be part of those conversations.
Yeah.
We have a group of residents not only in Bowdoin and Geneva, but also in not Mattapan Square, but Carmen Square, who would love to have these hub tables within their community. So
Absolutely, and like I said, it was almost like a pilot in the beginning. We're just trying to go through the process. We've never done this before as a police department, which Commissioner Cox has made a very high priority. And these positions will help us do it at a more frequent pace, just because of the amount of work that goes into these meetings, and just to make sure that every neighborhood gets the same opportunity. That's why this is such a big opportunity for us.
And I have probably two more questions. Can you provide details on specific tasks and initiatives the Hub Program Coordinator undertakes during these Hub Table convenings?
okay, so first I want to, can everyone hear me? Is
Yes.
the light on? Okay. First I want to clarify there's a difference between the community CompStat meetings and the Hub Tables.
Yep.
The Hub Tables are made up of direct service providers from multiple agencies that are geographically located in any given district. So let's say we have a hub table in B2, which is in Roxbury, that meets once a week. You will have Roxbury Multi-Service Center, Roxbury Youth Works, Black Ministerial Alliance, a health center, school representatives, etc. All of these organizations come to that table with representatives that are from their direct service staff. So it'll be like case managers, social workers, clinicians, because what we're talking about at the hub tables are very acute situations that people find themselves in, people who need help imminently. So in other words, the term that we use at the hub tables is acutely elevated risk. An acutely elevated risk is a family or a person who could end up homeless, is already homeless, could end up freezing, could be the victim of a violent crime. So these are eminent situations that are discussed about very specific people, families, or individuals. And so that's why at a hub table you have social workers, caseworkers, because those folks find out about these situations and then within 48 hours approach that family or individual to get them comprehensive service provision and work with them through that comprehensive service plan. That's the hub. We have 6 of those a week already. The hub was mentioned in this description because the hub representatives will also work with the community ComStat meetings. The community ComStat meetings are more about the crime that takes place in an individual geographic location, such as B2 Roxbury. And that's where community representatives, neighborhood associations, city council, nonprofit leaders, residents, families, youth can attend those meetings to learn about, well, what is crime has taken place in my neighborhood over the past month or two, and how can we problem solve together as a community with the police to sort of look at these crimes? Because oftentimes when there are crimes, you see the crime data, but you don't understand the trends that drive those crimes. And so that's why it's important to problem solve with community, so that we can all together look at the trends and go after ways to prevent the trends that end up resulting in the crime. And that's what the community ComStat meeting is about. So these community ComStat meetings, as they get launched due to the hiring of these 2 data analysts, will work together with what the work of the hub tables are doing. So, but you have 2 different distinctly unique meetings, in that one meeting is about immediately supporting people that are at high risk who need immediate attention. And the other meeting, which is the community ComStat, is about a broader look at crime in your neighborhood with police and those trends that are driving those crimes, and how do we work together to impact those trends to make crime go down.
Thank you for that. And something that the CSO officers in our neighborhoods, they show up to the monthly civic meetings. You know, they give a list, you know, year over year, you know, what crimes are up, what crimes are down, how many crimes have taken place, you know, in that geographical area. Would there be any difference to what they're currently doing in those in those meetings now? And then my last question is, you have 6, you said 6 hub tables already across the city of Boston.
Yes.
How do we get one started, I guess, in you know, whether it's Bowdoin in Geneva or Common Square?
So let me just start by saying that our full-time hub coordinator had just left about a month and a half ago. I'm in the process of working with the HR office within the Boston Police Department to repost that position. We will be looking for a person, obviously, who resides in the city of Boston, but we'll also be looking for somebody who has a great deal of leadership qualities and community knowledge and familiarity. So if you all have somebody that lives in the city of Boston that has a great deal of experience with both speaking well, a leader, and somebody who understands their communities, I will let you know so you can send in some resumes to the Boston Police Department when that position is open.
And this is, sorry, is this a civilian role? Or?
This is a civilian role, okay. But they still have to live in the city of Boston. Yeah. Secondly, once that, I'm going to be taking over that role in the in-between time, but once that position is posted, we will be able to then replicate the hub model in other police districts. So right now we have 6 hub tables. One of them happens to be in Melnia Cass, so that's not a district-based one, but the other 5 are district-based. When this new person comes on, their role is going to be to look around and work with other neighborhoods and other districts to say, okay, who's up next for a hub table to be created and launched in their neighborhood / in that district. So we will keep you in the loop as we proceed with that.
Please, would appreciate that.
Yeah, Council, on the community service. Community service will definitely be have a lot to do with community ComStat. These analysts will definitely be working with the sergeants and officers in the community service office. But like when these community service officers go to community meetings, they're a small part of that meeting, I guess you could say. They do their part, and there's other parts of the meeting, of course. This community ComStat goes very in depth. It's all about police in the community, how we can help each other, what are the real issues going on. You have very high level, not saying high level people at these meetings. The commissioner's been at all these meetings so far. I mean, I don't know if that will continue in going forward, because just time-wise, but they'll be, they go in depth of what is actually going on in the community. How can we, opportunities to solve these problems. It's not just coming out and say, hey, these are the crimes that are happening. We've had 10 break-ins on Blue Hill Ave, but, you know, or something like that. We go in depth in different subject matters.
Well, one last question, Chair, is, and I know this is a different system, 911 calls. Is 911 calls like a data point that is reflected or given at one of these CompStats?
They will definitely be looked into. These analysts will definitely look into that. Say if there's up an old road or something, just in your district, say there's numerous calls over a week or 2 weeks for loud parties or something like that. That is data that would definitely be analyzed by these analysts. That'd be looked into. So 911 calls would be a big part of this.
All right. Thank you. No further
Thank you,
questions.
Councilor Rowe. Councilor Braden. Ms. Braden, both dockets are on the floor.
Thank you. This has been very helpful. I think the differentiation between the hub tables and the community CompStat meetings, the hub table seems to be much more of a public health approach to trying to identify need and then coordinating all the services to help support the person.
And then they go to the person.
And and so you say there's 6 hub tables. Which districts are those in at the moment?
So right now we have C11, B2, E13.
Putting you on the spot.
I need to use my pen here for a second. So you have B2, which is A7, which is East Boston. B2 is Roxbury. E13 is Jamaica Pilling. C11 is Dorchester. You have Melnia Cass. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's my 6th one? Say it again. Roxbury is the B2 one. E13, I believe. I'm sorry, E5. Let me get back to you on this. Today's wasn't about the hub, so I didn't have the paper.
So I'm just curious in terms of the things, like I know when I talk to our neighbourhood community police officers, there's a lot of breaking and entering and stealing of packages and traffic issues, but those are more different. That's more a different bucket. But this one here is more. We have incidents of folks with mental health crisis, elders who have got dementias and are going in clear cutting other people's gardens, and so it's really more of a health intervention we need in those cases. Yeah. So the hub tables. That's the case managers, social workers, best clinicians, and then just the other local non-profits who are able to sort of bring in their resources to help address the issue. The other issue that I understand from a conversation with the district attorney, our district, out in District 14, is a higher than average incidence of domestic violence and intimate partner violence. So I'm just wondering, is that an issue that you bring into these hub teams as well?
The beauty of the hub table is that it can be any critical issue. What tends to happen over many years is you have siloed responses. So you have, just like everybody has siloed responses, you have specialists that just focus on victims of sexual assault, separate specialists that do domestic violence, separate ones that deal with crimes against children. You have folks that deal specifically with substance use disorder and other people that focus on mental health issues. This is an opportunity to have all of those cross disciplines at the same table. Housing specialists for people who suffer with housing insecurity or homelessness. And so if you think about it in terms of risk factors, let's say there's about 18 risk factors, and I could get you a copy of those risk factors. The service providers that come to the weekly hub table represent those responses to those 18 risk factors. And so if you're a police officer and you get a repeat call for service over and over again to the same address, and it's a domestic, and when you go there, the victim of of domestic violence is, leave me alone, I don't want anything to do with police. And we, let's say, send in an advocate, and the advocate, she says the same thing to the advocate. This is a way of offering more broad services to somebody that come to our attention specifically and mostly due to repeat calls for service. That repeat call for service could be a poor guy in front of a liquor store that's there over and over and over again waiting for the liquor store to open. And no matter how many times he's been approached by one individual to sort of get him the support that he needs, he's not about to listen to it. But when a group of people come and say, listen, let's work on this together. We have a community here to surround you. We have a plethora of things that we can help you work through. They're more likely to accept that support because they realize it's more comprehensive support. Because they know better than anybody that that one siloed approach doesn't work. Because the second they get straight, they have no place to live.
Yes.
So there's all these ways in which approaching somebody in a siloed approach really sets them up to fail. And so the hub table is there to offer that comprehensive long-term support so that they don't fail. And so that's why it's been pretty successful in that 70% of the time through these hub tables when folks approach people, we end up with a resolve. And it does end up, a lot of people that would not want support in the past now accept the support.
I think the point was made that every district has different challenges, and we have particular challenges in District 9 out in Alston Brighton because we have a fairly population, a large portion of our population that changes address and moves and comes and goes, and it's very hard sometimes to track what the problem is. And I'm just wondering, like, in terms of a hub table, is that we're probably well down the list of spaces that would be needing a hub table? I just don't know.
No, but we could definitely talk about this when this woman I shouldn't say woman, whoever gets this position, because we really don't have anybody right now that we're looking at. But yes, I mean, you know, with Melnia Cass, it's the trifecta. It's homelessness, substance use, and mental health disorders. So there's so many resources that sort of get focused on that. When you go to another district, sometimes you have people coming to the table saying, my kid is dropping out of school. I need support with that. Another district, you may have something else completely. But we would certainly love to speak to you more. One of the most important things is that the district in that area is ready to move on the hub table. Sometimes we have some transition and, you know, it's not a good time for a hub table to launch. Because when a hub table launches, everybody's required to go to almost a 3-day training. So every service provider has training, every CSO, police captain, everybody who then is asked to come to the table once a week after the training, it's mandated that they get the training because HIPAA laws and confidentiality is our priority. So we can't have people coming to the table that are not understanding of the law. When it comes
I think one of the challenges with reporting domestic violence or whatever is that reticence of if you have a mixed status family in terms of their immigrant status or bad experience with police in the past, that they just don't trust that they can the problem will be resolved in a good way, you know. So that's the other question I had was maybe Deputy Superintendent Cahill, you know, just thinking about, you know, is human trafficking something that we're watching in this sort of space as well? Because I know it sort of shocks me, but there was a human trafficking operation at the end of my street, and no one would have ever guessed it was there. But it's right under our noses in many cases, and a lot of these vulnerable immigrant populations are being exploited in ways that, you know, it's really they've no way out of it.
No, absolutely. It definitely can be involved with this. We already have at the BRIC, we have an analyst that's all they do is human trafficking with that human trafficking division. So we're already looking at that. It's not like something we haven't looked at or that it would be something new on the community ComStat. But if we definitely go, like you said, say in your district, if we see that's a problem, an issue, it would definitely be looked into.
Thank you. I think I would really look forward to a more in-depth conversation with you sometime and continue this in another space. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilor Erin Murphy.
Thank you. Just to follow up, and thank you for your deep knowledge, but also your willingness to explain the difference. It's important, and thank you, Councilor Worrell, for advocating for your district. But one of the questions I do have, and I pretty sure I already have the answer, but we know that there are certain districts, there's certain civic organizations, different civic leaders who advocate and speak up in amazing ways for their community. But at the end of the day, it's the data, right, that drives where the police need to be and what supports we need to put into place. So how do we balance that? I mean, as the world becomes more, transparent and open, right, and we share more of which is a good thing, but making sure that it's not, is what I hear often from the commissioner, all the way down through the ranks, is there's this perception in some parts of the city or across the city about crime, but then there's the reality of the data. So there's oftentimes communities who feel like they're being left out or things, they need more of something. And then there's also, on the flip side, which I've spoken to many police officers about, and I agree with it also, that even if the crime rates are down or your neighborhood is in a really kind of safe place, if you don't feel safe, that's all that really matters. Right. So it's kind of that continuous back and forth between the two. So it's really not a question, but just kind of reassuring that the brick in your intelligence is being shared and then also used to drive the resources needed.
Yeah, Council, I think that's a great point, and even a bigger advocate of why we should have community comm stats, because we are showing the data of what is really happening. In the age of social media right now, a lot of things get spun up. So we can go into these neighborhoods and show them get information from them as well, but show them what we are seeing through police reports or different data we were receiving that was actually happening, what areas might be affected by different sorts of crimes. So that's another reason why this is such a great idea, this community comm stat.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for stepping in for this important position until we hire someone. I think every department across the city would say that HR is slow to get things posted. So any way we can help, or I can help to get that out there, thank you. And it was a good plug for the position. I hope you get lots of, I'm thinking of people right now who should apply, so thank you.
I really, sometimes it takes you so long to get a position posted, and then you only get a certain amount of resumes back.
Right.
So what we could do in our office is make sure that everybody gets the job description when the position is posted and is aware that it's out there now. And in the meantime, you can think about people who have leadership skills as well as hard skills. And
awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Council Murphy, Chair recognizes Council President Flynn. Both dockets on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you to the panel for the important work you're doing here. I want to acknowledge Councilor Braden and Maria for speaking about domestic violence and the impact that has on the city, and also Deputy Superintendent Cahill talking about human trafficking as well. It's an issue I've worked on for the last 6 years. And I visited the first meeting I had, I visited the Asian Task Force Against Domestic Violence. And I asked the director, I said to her, what is the number one concern, challenge you have? And she said language access, because of a lot of the languages spoken. And that's an area they need to continue to work on. And I bring that up, but can you talk about, as it relates to maybe domestic violence, maybe human trafficking, factoring in immigration-related laws and a willingness not at times to come to the police? What can we do to improve language and communication access as it relates to these two specific grants, and how can we get the immigrant community more involved to provide more information to the police, but also to work closely with each other, with other nonprofit organizations, civic organizations? So just wanted to get your thoughts about that.
From the community CommStat level, I'll just point, we had one at C11, which is a very Vietnamese high, population. And when they came, we just want to make sure that, we're here for everybody. doesn't matter your immigration status or your what language you speak. We pointed out that we're here for you all, where we want to help. That's our main goal in the city of Boston, is to make sure every citizen feels safe. So that's what we tried to do, Community CompStat, making sure we get that message out, the transparency of us, making sure we are here to make sure they are safe.
We will be convening in January in the Police Commissioner's suite a number of service providers under the category of sex trafficking, crimes against children, sexual assault, and domestic violence. So all of our service provider partners, those leaders change often, and then our leaders change often. And so you may have a couple of years where you're working well with your service provider partners, you're passing off referrals well, they know where you end and begin, you know where they end and begin in terms of confidentiality and trust building between the police officers, service providers, and survivors, victims of these crimes. And so what we're going to do in January is have a networking opportunity in the suite to invite all the new service provider leaders to the table to meet with all the commanders and staff and advocate staff at the FJC, so that people understand the law and they understand that if somebody calls the police, that we are not reporting them based on their status to anyone, that they're to help them. And to get them the support they need, regardless of whether they decide to press charges at the end of the day or not. And so a lot of times when service providers aren't familiar with us, they're afraid to partner with us on this work because they don't know the rules that we're restricted by. And obviously we're restricted from not calling ICE when a victim comes who's maybe not documented. We have other restrictions around confidentiality. But when service providers don't understand that those are the restrictions we live by, oftentimes they don't want to partner with us, and vice versa. So this networking opportunity that we're hoping to have this coming January will give us both sides of the table the opportunity to really speak in very distinctive and specific language around what our responsibilities are, what our mission is, where we come from in terms of our view of how we work with survivors of gender violence. And from there, they're also going to share with us what their policies and protocols and procedures are. And once we both understand that, A, this is the rules of how we engage, then we can build a better bridge between how we work with them and serving the survivors and the victims of gender violence type crimes. And so I do think that after we have this in January, we should probably begin the habit of doing it at least once a year. Because again, staff change and people don't understand. And when people don't understand, they don't trust. And when people don't trust, then survivors aren't going to trust. So we have to build this pattern between each other so that survivors begin to understand how to best work with us so we can best serve them. So that's coming up.
And with regards to the accreditation portion of it, there is a community engagement requirement where we are required to engage with the community as far as surveys to find out what services they need, additional, say, areas that may need more policing as far as services. So the accreditation portion is going to give us a wealth of information as to what the community actually needs to allow us to create initiatives that may not be already created to serve the community at best.
Thank you. Thank you to all three of you, and appreciate your comments and your commitment on all of these issues. And just wanted to highlight, I had the opportunity many times to visit the Family Justice Center. They do exceptional work there. It's a critical organization and dedicated professional police and civilians doing exceptional work. And Maria, you highlighted the critical issue of violence and domestic violence, I should say, very well. It's something I'm trying to get a standalone committee on the Boston City Council, and I'm going to continue doing that because I think it's a critical issue. It's impacting every neighborhood in Boston. And so going forward, I'm just going to continue to ask my colleagues as we go into the new year to think about what was said here in domestic violence is not just an issue. We need to include language and communication access. We need to factor in and educate residents that if you come forward and you may have immigration-related issues, that does not impact you as a survivor. There's family support. There's a lot to this issue that you highlighted very well. So would love to let my colleagues know that there's a lot to this issue, and I hope they will support a standalone domestic violence committee as we go into the new year. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Council President Flynn. And Councilor Coletta, any comments on both dockets 1704 and 1749 are on the floor together?
Thank you, Chair, and I apologize for going in and out,
No
but I
worries.
was listening in. I apologize if my questioning may be repetitive. I missed some
No worries.
things. According to your website, the CompStat meetings empower commanders to address crime problems in their own district through increased strategic planning and resource coordination at the local level. You all create, and you all meaning BPD command staff creates best practices in districts throughout the city. I know that there was supposed to be an East Boston meeting coming up at some point. I would love to know the status of that because I do think that it's integral to my community, but also how this might benefit East Boston. And then also, I have deep respect and admiration for Dr. Isaac Yablo, and I know that you all work hand in hand, but how is this community CompStat informing his work? Because he has a very important job of going into communities, doing an upstream approach of preventative measures and restorative justice, and I want to know how the CompStat informs his work as well. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Councilman. So we work very closely with Isaac Yablo. We're at a meeting with him once a week where we're discussing different things that are going, specifically violent crime at this point throughout the city. So we share some information with him as well. He will be instrumental in the community CompStat, like different aspects he might see on the street that we haven't seen, which will provide data for us. So we're in constant contact with him. As for East Boston, we are very, very close within probably the next month, I would say, of having the community CompStat in East Boston. We were trying to get a little sooner. Things have come up where events in the city have come up where, not saying it got pushed back, but there's been quite a few protests and different like that going on through the city. We just had Army, Navy the other day. We had a lot of things going on in the city. So it's not like we did not have it. We just had to push it back just a little bit. So we're going to probably right after the holidays, first of the year, it'll be, I would believe, sometime in January. So we can let you know about that when it's going to happen. And in fact, how community CompStat will happen in will help East Boston. Like I said, as much data as we can get to show the people of East Boston that we are trying to be there for them. And if they can give us information, we're here to share information. So we're trying to build a relationship with every citizen of the city of Boston, but specifically for you over in East Boston. So I think this is a tremendous opportunity for the transparency to show the citizens over in East Boston of what the police are here, what we are doing, how we're trying to help their everyday life to make them feel safer, and we can show them how they can help us in different ways.
Thank you for that. And I do know just through different conversations with Dr. Yablo that in East Boston, and that's the reason why I bring it up, but there's been an uptick in youth violence. And so I really hope that he could be at the table. Obviously he already is, but throughout the CompStat process, informing what the next steps are for the community and how to address things like youth violence and how, we could really address traumas or anything that these kids are going through. So I appreciate that. And then on the flip side of all of this, I'm just curious because I spent a lot of time earlier this year working with the sexual assault unit, in particular Lieutenant Detective Driscoll on contaminated drinks, and trying to understand the trends that were happening in downtown Boston. We were able to get a change to the Mark 43 system where at least now you can track that data. I'm wondering if that has come up at all, the status of any of those incidents, and if we're doing anything to address it.
We're doing a lot to address it, I know that for a fact, especially in trying to get the data for us, see if locations might be different bars, it's happening more or something like that. I can get back to you on what the newest data might be saying, just I don't have it on me at this point, I'm sorry about that. But we've been watching this very closely. We actually, we met with just this weekend because the Army-Navy game was here and there were a lot of cadets and midshipmen staying over in Boston. So we made it clear to their investigative divisions of both the Army and Navy, that is something you should tell the midshipmen and the cadets to make sure they are careful if they go to bars, of making sure they watch their drinks, or if they're going, make sure it's covered up or things like that, or if they have any, think their drink spiked anyway, to make sure they're contacted. So it is a very big issue at this point. I just want to highlight how big of it is.
Thank you. I'd love to get that information.
We will get it to
And
you.
I want to again thank Lieutenant Detective Driscoll for always being so responsive, and everybody in the police force for addressing this issue. Thank you.
So, thank you. Any questions of these two grants? Any remaining questions of my colleagues before we shift to the next panel? Seeing any. Good. Councilor Morell.
And this is going back to the hub table. I know we do it at the district level, but then I think about, what C11 covers, right? And C11, they go from, Bowdoin, Geneva, all the way up to like Washington Street, all the way to Four Corners. And sometimes those are all, different issues. So that you have like a neighborhood, but then like a sub-neighborhood within a neighborhood.
So everybody that comes to the table is allowed to be able to bring a situation to the table. So although the Boston Police convenes the table, sets the table, the police oftentimes get their referrals by combing through the weekly incident reports. And they'll note in the incident reports what are the calls for service, what people are in imminent danger or harm. And they have their own process internally where they determine what situations they're going to bring to the hub that week. However, everybody else at that table, including the health centers, the schools, the local nonprofits, the youth-serving organizations, they're allowed as well to bring their own cases to the table of situations that they're dealing with on their caseloads that are intractable without the help of others. And so, it really is an open forum for the whole community to be able to make referrals into.
Okay. And do you know how often or what day C11?
Yeah, I can, if you, I think you have to contact me through City Council, Intergovernmental Relations, I think it is. But if you put the request into Intergovernmental, they will then give it to me, and then I will give you the different log-ons that are available every single week for the different districts. One of the things that's important is that you sign a confidentiality document before you get onto the web, the Zoom meeting. Because, again, there's a confidentiality issue. So before you attend the meeting, just to watch it in progress and see how it works, you're going to need to sign that form. But for many of these meetings, you can go in person or you can go into a Zoom once a week to pay attention or to participate.
Then my last question for Deputy Cahill is, on the 3 ComStat meetings that were held, how many community members were in attendance at I think you did one at B3 and C11?
Yeah, I would say, average maybe 30 to 40, I believe, at that point. We want to probably get a bigger crowd eventually. Like I said, this is not saying it's a pilot. We started this. We want to make sure we do it the right way. We'll definitely end up coming back to C11, E3, E13 if we started at some point. But we definitely it's going to be a bigger crowd eventually, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Morell. And just for housekeeping, I have a letter of absence from my colleague, City Councilor Ruth C. Louisiane. Dear Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice members, I regret to inform you that I'm unable to attend today's Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice Dockets 1701, 1704, 1705, 1749, and 1796. I want to express specific support for Grant 1701, 1704, 1705. These grants to the Boston Police and Fire Department will critical personal protective equipment, training, health screening, software that support evidence collection systems. However, I do want to express reservations for Grant 1749, 1796. These grants are administered by the Boston Police Department Office of emergency management, yet ultimately passed through the support of Metro Boston Homeland Security, and further down the pipeline supports Boston Regional Intelligence Center. Specifically, these grants will in large part go towards surveillance and hiring data analysis. I kindly asked as chair that you submit the following questions. So I have, so you've got 5 or 6 questions for both you and Shemaine Benford. Her staff will be attending. She'll review the video, hearing minutes, and public testimony. And if you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to contact her office. So before you leave, Deputy Superintendent, she got 5 questions about the grants and the projects, the programs, the cost, where the grants go, staffing, descriptions, pay rate, job responsibilities, software training contracts. So it's kind of a consortium of questions that she had. She was not able to be here, so I'll ask the staff liaison to just give you a copy, and then I'll get one to Shemaine as well. So that will conclude. So you folks, it's great to see you, Jerry and Marcus, and obviously Maria.
Thank
Always
you
been
for
a
your
pleasure
service.
working with you over the years, and appreciate the work that you do out there, keeping our city and our neighborhood safe. And you don't have a safe city, you don't have much. You know, if you're not safe in school, if you're not safe in your neighborhood, you're not safe in your local business district, you're not safe going to the store, coming to and from church, coming to City Hall. And we do it better than anybody. I don't care what anyone says across the country. It's the community policing effort that we put forward. It's the leadership, it's the training, and it's the partnerships. Key word there is the partnerships. So look forward to continue working with you in other capacities, but I just want to thank you for your service to our city on behalf of the Boston Police Department. It's been a pleasure to work with you guys all these years.
Thank you, Council. Again, thank you for your service to the city for all these years. Good luck in your future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Shemaine Benford, last but not least, by any stretch of the imaginations, this is 13 million balloons, so sorry to keep you waiting. And whoever you need to come down with you, feel free to invite whoever you need to be part of your team, if anyone. It's good afternoon. I thought I was going to squeeze you in the morning, but good afternoon.
No worries, sir. Happy to be here.
Shemaine
Happy to wait.
Benford, always good to see you, and I know you got a team of folks that I'll allow you to introduce at the appropriate time. So we're here obviously to discuss Docket 1796, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $13,317,200 in the form of a grant, fiscal year 2023 Urban Area Security Initiative. It's been awarded by the United States Department of Homeland Security, passed through the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety Security, to be administered by the Mayor's Office of Emergency Management. This grant will fund planning, exercise, trainings, and operational needs that will help prevent, respond to, and recover from threats of acts of terrorism, including chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive incidents. This was referred to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice on December the 6th. Mayor Wu sponsored these dockets, asked that we have an expedited hearing, try to have these matters put forth before the council this Wednesday for our final session. So you don't need an introduction, but just for folks watching at home, your title, of course, and then if you'd be kind enough to introduce your team and their specific role and title. So welcome, Shemaine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Greatly appreciate it. I want to start by joining the chorus of individuals this morning to thank you for your service, certainly for the courtesy and support that you've always extended to me, OEM, in this city. So thank you very much, and I too wish you all the best in the next chapter. So thank you very much. Greatly appreciate the opportunity. My name is Shemaine Benford, and I'm the Chief of Emergency Management. Joining me here today is Assistant Deputy Andrew Bloniarz, who supports administration and finance. We have our Supervisor Emily Wisdom, who administers and supervises the staff that works directly with our individual stakeholders across the region. And we also have Malik Canty, again, who is our unit supervisor as it relates to administration and finance. I also want to recognize Council President Flynn this morning. I know it's been a long morning. Good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you, Chief.
Same here. Thank you. Mr. Chair, OEM serves as the fiduciary and the administrative support for the Metro Boston Homeland Security region. That is the legal entity that receives and administers the grant on behalf of the Boston region. It should be noted that while OEM supports the MBHSR from a fiduciary and an administrative standpoint, we have no executive authority over the grant. There is a process by which funds are awarded, granted, and approved to be used for the various different program areas within our region. As you and many may be aware, this is not a new funding stream. This perpetual funded grant from the Department of Homeland Security through FEMA has been perpetually funded for the past 20 plus years, and the Boston region has been a recipient of those grants. Very specifically, the grant is designed to build capacity to prevent and respond to related acts of terrorism and natural disaster. As we all know, the threat landscape continually changes. Domestic violence extremism is an example of how it has evolved over time, and that's otherwise known as homegrown terrorism. We know that we have paid a very dear price in our city as related to the Marathon bombing. We had individuals that were homegrown and that were radicalized through a process. It should be noted that it's nearly impossible for any local jurisdiction to be able to pivot and meet the demands of every threat landscape that evolves. So this grant is extremely supportive in that space and allows us to be in the same space as the federal government has identified national priority areas. And this funds and these resources help us as a city and as a region maintain our security posture in this space. These funds also support FEMA's core missions of protection, prevention, response, recovery, and mitigation to natural disaster. As it specifically relates to DUASI federal fiscal year 23, the federal government through congressional delegation has awarded $615 million to be able to support the program. The Boston area, it's not a specific Boston grant, but the Boston region, Boston area received just over $16 million to be able to support this work. Boston's threat ranking in federal fiscal year 22 was 12. Our ranking went up to 11.
Out of 100? Or
so it funds the top 85th percentile, sir, out of the largest metropolitan statistical areas across the country. So our ranking, you will find in federal fiscal year 23, we went from 12 to 11. So again, it recognizes the vulnerabilities that we as a region may have in that space. With regards to tied to that, sir, it should be noted that although we went from 12 to 11 in terms of significance, if you were to rank it or view it through that lens, we also lost $253,000 this year. So we went from 16.9 last year to roughly 16.6 this year. So
in grant funds?
That is correct, right? So the threat landscape is ever evolving with less resources to be able to meet it. The MBHSR, as I mentioned, is the legal entity that supports the region. The region is made up of 9 cities and towns, with Boston being the core city, and includes our colleagues from Somerville, Cambridge, Chelsea, Revere, Winthrop, Brookline, Everett, and Quincy. As I mentioned earlier, major decisions with regards to programmatic funding are made through the jurisdictional points of contact, otherwise referred to as the JPOCs. And the overall objective of the grant is to build regional capacity. As I mentioned, it's not a individual grant for any cities and town, any one city or town. It's about regional capacity. Our routine partners are police, fire, EMS, emergency management, and public health. The state actually serves as the applicant, and the state administrative agent, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, sir, where the money is passed through, the resources are passed through the state and then awarded to the region. The 6 national priority areas for federal fiscal year 23 are soft targets and crowded spaces, information and intelligence sharing, domestic violent extremism, community preparedness and resiliency, enhancing cybersecurity, and enhancing election security. It should be noted that it's a mandatory requirement of the federal resources that 30% be dedicated to these national priority areas. And within that 30%, guidance requires that no less than 3% in all of the national priority areas, with the exception of cybersecurity, receive no less than 3%. So overall funding has to come at 30%, with no less than 15% being committed to those national priority areas. Within our region, we have 9 program or 9 goal areas that funds and resources go to support. And it is extremely important to mention some of the very specific examples in terms of where and how these resources have supported in the past. During the pandemic, this grant was used to provide the first round of PPE for our first responders, police, fire, and EMS to stay in service to our communities. This equipment helps to secure critical infrastructures like city halls. The equipment has been used to help locate unfortunate drowning victims in our respective communities. They support election response. They also provide equipment for the fire service to fight fires, as well as for the police department in criminal investigations. We use it to support election nights. The EOC is stood up in support of our election posture to ensure that we have an impartial, fair, and protected system throughout the election process. It supports public health programming, EMS meds, and most recently it has been used to support the migrant response of our city in a dignified way. Checks and balances, Mr. Chair, to the program include the monthly meetings of the MBHSR. They are public meetings. The state office.
Where are they held, Shumate?
They're typically held anywhere within the region, but we often meet over in Charlestown at District 15, Boston Police. It's a facility that's large enough. We too, like everyone else, are required to advertise the meetings through open public records, that process of advertising it. So again, it is a public meeting. We also have FEMA Region 1, which is based here in Boston. We have FEMA headquarters, and we also have internal policies that we use to help manage the grant. In closing, Mr. Chair, I would advocate that the City Council, your colleagues in this body, supports accepting those resources. They are absolutely critical to our city's security posture and our region's security posture. And as we have mentioned in the past, and will always remain committed to transparency and working with all partners in this space, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shumate, for a thorough presentation and for your team's presence here. You and I have talked about this a while ago. The urban search and rescue, it's still up in Beverly, correct?
That is correct, the training portion.
I can never figure out why we're up in Beverly. When you think you had mentioned the threat landscape, obviously September 11th was launched from Logan, obviously the marathon bombing. When folks come here, we've had white supremacist Nazi groups, anti-Semitic groups, Hamas sympathizers, other hate groups. They tend to sort of City Hall, State House, Copley. They sort of go to sort of those areas. I don't hear of anyone going to Beverly or a major catastrophe up in Beverly. So unless they've just got access to all kinds of resources and land up there, I always wanted to see whether or not we can get the urban search and rescue division to be sort of headquartered here in partnership with Boston Fire, Boston Police, and Boston EMS. But probably a little bit of a bigger lift. But I just didn't know. I don't know why it's there. If you could, just for everyone's edification.
Sure. I do believe that the regional, the federal regional base, I believe, is based out of Beverly. Mm-hmm. It's based out of Beverly. And, sir, I mentioned the 9 goal areas that we do have, and I appreciate your question on it. Those 9 goal areas are supported by a subcommittee. Those subcommittees are made up of the subject matter experts. So the support of those resources in that space, we always want to lead in the city and lead the region in that space. But police, fire, and EMS are the subject matter experts that do feed into that and support that training that's done through that region. But it is directly tied to resources that are based on.
I always figured if there's going to be an incident, most likely it's going to be in Boston, not Beverly.
Yes, sir.
And the time to get them from there to here, if there's an explosion, there's a collapse, there's an extrication out of a building. We're waiting however long for, I guess, the urban search and rescue team to get here from Beverly.
I would say, sir, that while I won't speak for them, Boston Fire does have significant assets to be able to respond in the immediacy with additional resources that can be brought in statewide and or from FEMA.
Okay. Good stuff. And then on the chemical, the biological, the radiological, and nuclear explosive incidents, this funding here kind of keeps our eye on the ball with respect to those potential threats.
Absolutely. That is an independent goal area that is supported, yes, sir.
Council President Flynn, any questions of Sherman and his team? 1796.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to the chief and to your team and the professional work you all are doing. I know it was mentioned the Boston Marathon bombing obviously took place here just a short walk from here over to the Copley area, and the hijackers from 9/11 as well. I had the opportunity, while working in the military for over 20 years, to also work on terrorism, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear-related issues. I guess my question is, Boston is an international city. It's a place where people come to for colleges and universities and medical care, and the life sciences are the best here in Boston and Cambridge, and international students. I understand the importance of why we desperately need this money for this international city. But one challenge I have at times is educating people about why these funds are needed and why Boston is a big city potential target, unfortunately. And I think you explained it well, Chief, but give us an answer again on what's the best message to educate the public, because it is important that we educate the public, because these are federal funds. They're going into the state of Massachusetts. They're going into the city of Boston. We're partnering with cities and towns across Greater Boston, across the state. What is the message, Chief, of why this is important?
Sir, thank you very much for the question. We are a world-class city, and certainly respectful of our neighbors to the north and the south. Boston is the economic engine of New England, and being a world-class city comes with certain responsibilities, right? The responsibility to ensure that our city is safe. The responsibility of partnering with our neighbor jurisdictions to ensure that our region is safe. And most importantly, thinking about our neighborhoods, thinking about the things that are most near and dear to us, things that in many instances there could be a tendency to take things for granted, like school opening. Our major colleges and universities, when we have move-in day, ensuring that parents that send their children here from around the world feel safe in our city. When we think about all of the world-class events that this city hosts, whether at our convention center or otherwise, the president coming into our city, we have to have a robust infrastructure to be able to interface with our federal partners so that we can ensure that when the president or other dignitaries come into our city, they're safe. So that when we host first night, our residents are safe. So that when we engage our election process, there could be no question that we, unlike other regions of the country, have a process that maintains and upholds our liberties with regards to voting. All of those things are intangibles that we don't talk about oftentimes because they don't rise to the top. But those are things that this grant helps us to support. Just me walking in this building here today, going through the process downstairs, being able to park and walk in a neighborhood and in a community where I feel safe to be able to go about and do our official work, but not only do our official work, but for my family to be able to move in this city. So as we think about the messaging, sir, around how do we educate the people and how do we have broader conversations, I would ask that we think about all the things that we enjoy about our city. Most importantly, when we think about the statistics that the police department will often cite around the safety of our city, and there's still a lot of work to be done. All of those things are direct beneficiaries of our collaborative work that is supported by this grant.
Thank you. I had the opportunity over the weekend to be at the football game, actually, and to be with the Defense Secretary, the Secretary of the Army, the Secretary of the Navy, the Chief of Navy Operations, the Chief of the Army, Chief of Staff of the Army, the VA Secretary. They were all in the city of Boston pretty much at the same time. That's coordination, that's being prepared, that's City of Boston working closely with your team, police department, but also you working with federal partners, state partners. But democracy is expensive, and that's why we're supporting these dockets, these documents, because we want to be a world-class city, and when you're a world-class city, you have to prepare to be a world-class city, and it's expensive, but you have to make sure that you have the right information, the intelligence gathering, and ensure Boston is always safe. I just want to say thank you to your team.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Shoaib. Chair recognizes Councilor Murphy. Questions of
Thank you.
Jermaine and his team, 1796 docket.
And thank you for being patient. Last but not least, like the chair said, a few things obviously in support of this grant, and you mentioned, which is important to mention, that there's lots of behind the scenes things that happen every day in the city that people don't even really, shouldn't even have to worry about, but there's lots of times that you have to make sure that all of different departments are coordinating to make sure that we're safe. Something that Council President Flynn always advocates for so strongly, and I admire, is when, you know, there's a parade, but then at the same time there may be a protest, and Cahill mentioned it here also, with that with East Boston waiting, because there's things happen, right? The president, I got caught in that traffic, arrives in Boston. Like, there's times we have to make sure that we step up and keep our residents safe. So just knowing that there's more to what you guys all do that most people don't even understand. It's important that we're getting you the funding you need. So looking forward to the chair putting this forth on Wednesday and passing it as one of the last things we do here this term on the council. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Anyone wishing to offer public testimony may do so now, or forever hold your peace. Seeing and hearing no desire to do so. Any on Zoom? Nothing on Zoom. So Jermaine had references you were coming down the stairs. So one of my colleagues had submitted an absent letter, but also had some questions that you may hopefully can get to between now and Wednesday to potentially help secure her support. But so I'll leave you with a copy of that before you leave. And then obviously as chair of public safety, I obviously want to thank Council President Flynn for appointing me and for having the confidence in my abilities to chair the Committee on Public Safety, work closely with you and your team, SHU, Police Department, Fire Department, EMS. And we're blessed with very highly professional, trained, dedicated, coordinated departments that work closely together to keep our city safe. I'd like to thank, obviously, the administration and working with the Wu administration, and prior to the Wu administration, the Walsh administration. Prior to the Walsh administration, when I got my start, it was the Menino administration. Clearly, to my staff, who've been a big part of helping, prepare for hearings. And be remiss if we didn't recognize Christine O'Donnell, who's with us as part of central staff, and she's probably been the liaison to the committee on my side from government operations as well as public safety, probably more than anyone. I can speak to her acumen and her commitment to our city and her commitment to the hearings, and making sure that she's always prepared, always has me prepared as chair, and we're always making sure that we're accommodating to the best of our ability the public, and whether that's public testimony or more recently the Zoom testimony. But we've had some, there's been some chaotic hearings at times, but we've been able to get the job done, and Christine has been a big part of that, and also of my success as chair, so I'd be remiss if I didn't compliment her. And on behalf of the City Council, I want to wish you, obviously, a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to all of you, and Happy New Year, and look forward to working with you in some capacity moving forward. But my hope is to get a committee report turned around quickly for this grant to be approved by the Boston City Council on Wednesday. So continue to give you the resources with, as you had referenced so appropriate, sort of the threatening landscape changes, but the resources have been kind of dissipating, and so this 13 million will obviously, 13 plus will go a long way in giving you the resources, your team the resources to make sure that we're keeping our city safe. So to Shemaine, Andrew, Emily, Malik, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the partnership you have with our city, and look forward to working together to keep our city the safest city in the country.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. And I just want to thank you on behalf of our jurisdictional partners. They have been very appreciative of your support of this grant over the years, as well as our state partners. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Shemaine.
Happy holidays to you.
Same here. So with respect to docket 1701, 1704, 1705, 1749, and 1796, the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.